Here is how to answer a difficult MMI question. Question. Due to a shortage of medical practitioners in rural areas, more and more international medical graduates, IMGs, are given the opportunity to fill those roles. In your opinion, what are the positive and negative aspects of such an approach? In which ways can this policy be beneficial? And in which ways can it be detrimental?
This policy is very, very relevant towards the field of medicine, specifically in first world countries, since there are a lot of international medical graduates that end up trying to do their equivalencies and trying to start new careers. And so I think it's quite relevant and quite important, but it's important as well to take into consideration those that are going to be affected. It's not just about the medical graduates themselves. It's also about their family and friends and about the patient populations in these rural areas as well. So taking into consideration everyone that is involved and why it's important to consider their points of view, policies like this do have positive and negative sides. I'll go into the positives first. For the international medical graduates themselves, it is a great opportunity to be able to get good experience, and it's also good for them because it's not the same kind of experience you would get in an urban area, since there are fewer professionals there to be able to do the skills required or the interventions. They get more hands-on experience, they get more diverse experience in being able to handle different situations, and they get more of those opportunities than they would have in an urban setting. So it is good to further their education for sure, and to give them that confidence to be physicians. And then from the point of view of the patient population in the rural areas, short term, it's good for them because you are getting doctors to fill the patient needs at the time that they are doing their residency in this rural area for now. So short term, it is good. You're getting professionals to be able to take care of the patients. However, on the other side of things, there are negatives to these kinds of policies as well. For the international medical graduates themselves, sometimes they are unable to, for example, leave their families. And so you're making a very difficult choice for them. Do I want to get the experience? And can I leave my family behind in an urban setting just because they are unable to relocate with me? For example, that's one side of it that makes it a negative for them. And then for the patient population themselves, it's negative in terms of long term. There's no continuity of care for them. If every time IMG finishes their residency or rotation there, then they get a new doctor. So there's no continuity of care. There's not one person that can continuously follow up with them, that knows their history very well and in details and had that interaction with them. It also affects the patient and physician relationship to continue to try to develop trust with a new person. Every time a new person approaches, they might not know the needs of that specific patient population. So they also have to take time to adjust to that as well. So I think everything has pros and cons in this case. Personally, I wouldn't necessarily agree with a policy like this one. I think that if it's an optional choice and IMGs just have the option of doing it, that would be great, but it shouldn't be forced upon them. And instead, what we can try to do is focus more on maybe incentivizing it so that it is more appealing for them, or even just allocating a certain quota of the medical student seats in the institutions to be to those that are applying from rural areas, since they can better represent their populations and that they are more likely to continue to serve these populations long term instead of just doing a rotation and then going back to an urban setting. Thank you.
You had great points. I don't think you need to change anything that you had said, just make it a little bit more concise in some of your descriptions.
Mm-hmm.
Overall, kind of going back to that structure, and we only talked about, I think, one policy question last time. So I am going to ask you, what is the structure for a policy question this time?
To discuss what is the issue, or acknowledge the issue, and then give pros and cons for each side, and then to pick a position, but then like provide adjustments to accommodate for the other side, the opposing side.
Yeah, and I think that you did that rather well. So definitely kind of addressing the issue or showcasing your awareness of the issue was appropriate. You said this is relevant in a lot of these first world countries where they don't have enough people to support these rural areas. You then also talked about some of the parties that could be affected as well, just generally. The patients involved, as well as the family and friends of the graduate as well. And I'll be honest, at first I was a little bit concerned because I didn't think that you were going to tie in the family and friends aspect after you went through the pros, but you did in the end for the cons. So great job with that. You then had 2 good pros. Here, the graduate themselves will get a good experience, be exposed to these rural environments, and you went into detail about it. I thought that you did that very well. As well as in the short term, the patients there are going to get doctors to fill their immediate needs. So that is definitely a pro as well. And then for the cons, you had mentioned that they might be unable to leave their families in this situation. So you brought in the family and friends, aligned it with the graduates as well, that they might be in a situation that doesn't allow for them to do this. And then in the long term, you'd also mentioned that there's no continuity of care. And that is definitely what I see as one of the biggest downsides here, is it almost ends up being this revolving door of physicians if there's no incentive for them to stay. And so ultimately you were against this. And what I found maybe a little bit confusing is I think you interpreted this as being forced instead of being an opportunity. And I think the wording, given the opportunity, makes it implied that this is an optional situation for them. That being said, you did say that you would want to make sure that this was optional. And some of the modifications that you would focus on here is incentivizing people to kind of come in and help these rural communities and allocating slots for these rural students so that way they go back to, or they are more likely to go back and serve those rural populations. And I thought that was an appropriate one as well. With kind of the incentives, I think one of the things that you maybe could have touched on as a possibility, and this is just an alternative, you didn't have to include this by any means, is given incentives for the graduates themselves, these international graduates, to stay in the area. And this could be paying for or helping their families move to the area, for example. That then gives kind of, or deals with that con of their friends and family maybe not being able to come over. That incentive to help would definitely ease that, at least on the family side. As well as that there not being that continuity of care, providing incentives for graduates that do choose to stay. That would also help deal with that con as well. So that could have been a potential avenue to go about if you were kind of for this policy, realizing that it was optional in the initial question. Otherwise, you did fantastic. You used the structure well. Everything that you had mentioned was great. Just needs to be a little bit more concise, and you had great descriptions. I think it just needs to be just a little bit more concise to allow for more follow-up questions.
More videos will be coming your way to help you tackle every MMI question you will face during your med school interview. We can't wait to help you get accepted to your dream school.